So Tower Hamlets Council has been in the news recently because they've got a policy of taking down all of the English and British flags in their council area, and presumably this is to stop foreigners feeling unwelcome. Although, this does beg the question, if foreigners feel uncomfortable seeing English and British flags, then why are they here? I mean, a lot of foreigners will talk about how terrible this country is, how racist we are and so on, but why don't they just leave if that's the case? No one ever seems to be able to answer that question. Now, that news story has prompted people to start putting flags up around the country, and it's worth talking about the effects of people putting up flags. And there's also been a conversation that people have had about the union and whether people in England, Scotland and Wales should be more proud of that nationality or of the British nationality. Now, I do think it is a good thing for people to put up flags to show how proud they are of their country, because all of the other nationalities, it's acceptable for them to be proud of where they're from. It's only the English and the British that can't be proud of their own nationality. It's only when it's us that it's racist, although that's just not a word that I think should be used anymore. And what putting up these flags will do, it will show to our people that have nationalist and anti-immigration views, that they're not the only ones, that there are people across the country that have similar views. Because if you see a British flag or an English flag, then it's going to make you feel proud of your nation. That's just what I think people will do when they see one just walking about. And it's going to make other people that are walking past also feel proud of their nation. And it's going to have an effect of making people more patriotic. And there's a lot of people in this country that aren't political, and they're not just going to suddenly become political by seeing a flag, but it might start that process of them becoming political, of them becoming aware of the state of the country and so on. And given how things are, we need as many people as possible to be against immigration. Otherwise, we're going to become a minority, and that'll be it. 1,000 years of British history will be gone if we become such a small minority that retaking this country becomes impossible. And what a lot of nationalists, the problem we've got is that there are loads of us, but a lot of us don't realise how many other people there are that think like us, and putting up these flags will make people aware of how many other people think like them. And if you polled people on the ethnic change of Britain, most people, when asked in isolation, would say that it's a bad thing. But most people don't realise that most other people think like that. So we've got to make people aware that other people think like that. I think it should be a requirement for, in places where there is a lot of foot traffic, for there to be flags of England and Britain, and of local county flags, if that's a thing. I think it would be good for the nation and good for the people to be more proud of where they're from. And one of the other problems we've got, though, which putting up flags won't solve, is foreigners trying to claim British identity. Now, the problem of foreigners claiming English identity is slowly being reversed. I mean, you've got mainstream people like Konstantin Kisin, Matt Goodwin, and even Suella Braverman saying that English is an ethnic identity. And that's a positive development. We need to be clear that not anyone can be English. Just being born in England doesn't make you English. But we've also got a problem of those same people saying that anyone can be British as long as they've integrated, as long as they've were born here or whatever, when there's no such thing as integration, really. If you're intelligent, then you'll know that. But some people are very proud to be British. A lot of patriots, ethno-nationalists are very proud to be British, and they really support the union, which is fine. But we also need to display English flags and talk about Englishness, because Englishness is the one, we can claim it a lot better than Britishness, I think. So we need to be absolutely clear that English is an ethnic identity, and then we also need to reclaim British as an ethnic identity. But ultimately, you know, putting up flags isn't going to solve that problem. You know, there's going to have to be other things done to try and reclaim Britishness as an ethnic identity. And this discussion about England and Britain and the flags has also prompted some people to start talking about the Union and whether or not, you know, there should be a United Kingdom, or whether or not, you know, England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland should just be separate nations. And, you know, I don't really have a strong opinion on this because, you know, the Westminster government is terrible, but it's not like the Scottish, Welsh and Irish governments are any better. You know, ultimately, the aim of government policy should be to improve the welfare of its own people. And at the moment, splitting up the Union wouldn't make any difference. So, you know, the problem that all of the British nations have got is mass immigration and ethnic replacement. And I think that's the main problem that needs to be solved. And I don't think that talking about splitting up the Union would achieve anything. If anything, I think it will just be a distraction. You know, we want people to vote with immigration in mind. We don't want people to vote in terms of whether or not they support independence of their nation, because at the moment it wouldn't change things. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, then please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.